Hello and welcome to Photographic Connections, the podcast where we create connection to self, nature and others through the art of photography. My name is Kim Grant, the founder of Photographic Connections and your host for this podcast. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Bernard Geraghty onto the podcast. Bernard is an Irish photographer who runs very successful photography workshops in both Ireland and worldwide. We speak about his passion for photography, how he's outdoors at every opportunity available to him, and how he's gone on to create his successful workshop business by creating beautiful experiences for others and showing them the delights that nature has to offer. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bernard Geraghty. Hi Bernard, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast this week. I want to say a huge shout out once again to some of our listeners because it was one of them that very kindly recommended you as a potential guest. So it's really lovely to be introduced to your work and get the chance to speak to you today. And what I always like to begin with guests is for them to go way back to the beginning of their journey and share the story of what got them into photography in the first place.
So you said we've only 40 minutes, is that right?
Yes, roughly.
How is an hour and 40 minutes if I go back all the way? Listen, Kim, thanks very much for having me on. It's nice to be asked. It's nice that someone requested that I be on. Apologies if people see me when the video comes out. My AirPods don't tend to stay in very much. But no, listen, obviously very happy to be on and stuff like that. And yeah, listen, if I was to go back to the very start of my photography journey, it's not actually that far. It's only back to 2015, 2016, when I first purchased a camera. And to be honest, I used to do I still do a lot of hiking, and that's kind of what brought everything on. Was just, my hiking and stuff. And, kind of like everybody, without delving too much into it, I think probably mental health played a part in why I purchased the camera, and nothing crazy. As I said, I won't delve too much into it, but yeah, just a couple of things in life just kind of shifted, and I didn't feel myself, and just spoke to my doctor, and he asked me a series of questions, which was the main one being, and what's your favorite hobby outside of like football and stuff like that, and I said, well, hiking. So he said, and do you document, everybody's doing these YouTube videos, and take it into account, this is kind of 7-8 years ago. So, basically I was like, no, I don't want to document, but like, I just have my phone. And obviously back then, phones, didn't have great cameras and stuff like that, So yeah, that was kind of the start of it. I remember going into Harvey Norman's then, and about a week later, and just saying, okay, I just telling this guy I wanted a camera. And this guy helped me. He was very, very good, still works there to this day. But my first camera was like a Fuji XM1. I think that's how it was. And it was like a mirrorless camera, but like interchangeable lens. And I thought it was great, and that just kind of got me started, really, and I used to take it on my hikes, and I was obsessed. I remember being obsessed with getting this bokeh. I seen like photos of like a bottle, with a bottle in focus and the background blurred, or you might see a person, and in focus and the background blurred. And I just wanted that effect, but not necessarily in people. I tried to get it in the landscapes, like literally, like I'd be shooting a mountain miles away, and I'd be wondering why I couldn't get the sky blurred and the mountain in focus, and obviously then start to understand what aperture was, and it doesn't quite work like that, and my first ever long exposure was me running the kitchen tap, so it just goes to show like that it can, all these silly things that we find silly and possibly stupid are not really at all. These are literally how you learn, and these are questions I get asked then, obviously doing workshops now. People always say, I'm going to ask a question, but maybe it's a stupid question. I'm like, listen, trust me, I've been through it all. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And that's kind of how it developed, that was how I first bought my camera,
Brilliant. You'd mentioned there a little bit about your mental health. So what did you find with photography? What did it give you in terms of improving your mental well-being at the time?
I suppose it gave me a reason to get up and get out early in the morning. Like it's easy, I think, when you're not feeling great. And listen, I wasn't feeling that bad. I just didn't feel myself. but it's not, you know, you can totally get engrossed in, you know, like staying up late at night, not getting up out of bed until, you know, 11 or 12, you know, in the morning if you're not working and stuff. So photography just gave me a chance to see things in a new light, literally, because, you know, we're looking at sunrise and sunsets and stuff like that, which are different light. And it just gave me a reason to get up, and I became totally engrossed in it then. And, you know, went from getting up at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock to getting up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you know. And it just totally took over my life, literally. And that's how it led to accidentally becoming my job.
It's amazing. I mean, I got into photography when I was a teenager, and at the time I was battling with really quite severe depression and anxiety to the point where like I didn't want to be alive anymore. And photography actually gave me, I say it saved my life, like, 'cause it literally did. It gave me a way, as you said there, of seeing the world in a different light. It gave you an excuse or an initiative to get out, and you started seeing the world differently. And it's nice to hear that you had a very positive experience there as well with your mental health. And then what's gone on then for you, you know, in some ways there's some similarities here, you know, as well. You kind of started it as a hobby. It was helping you at the time with your well-being, and now you've gone on to do these, you know, big workshops around the world. And it's been a very different process for me, but I'm sort of in the same sort of route as you as well, which is lovely to have that in common. And you're of course based in the beautiful Ireland, so it's no difficulty to see why you were so inspired by the landscape. What do you love so much about your home country?
So I like it's just how the light is different, you know. There's certain parts of the country where it doesn't matter what the weather, you will get something. And I know the same can be said for a lot of places. We're not the only moody place to shoot and stuff like that. So, but just I suppose we have such a diversity of stuff. You know, there's some places in the world that are known for waterfalls. There's some places in the world that are known for seascapes, some known for mountains. And we kind of just have it all, you know, like Scotland, you know, we have it all. We've got castles, we have, you know, seascapes, we've sea stacks, we've sea arches, we've cliffs, we have amazing lighthouses, you know, and mountains and lakes and, you know, mist. And when you have all these elements, it's quite easy to go out and find something, you know, and honestly, it just blows me away. And the thing is, the first thing I wanted to do when I kind of honestly fell into doing photography workshops, it was totally accidental. Basically, I was just out 24/7, sunrise, sunset, had a job as well. So I was like getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning, driving one way to go shoot sunrise or whatever, coming back, you know, home to get a shower and stuff, and then going the opposite way to go to work. And this would all be before 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was just doing that constantly. And I remember the girl I was with at the time, which, you know, thankfully get on very well with her now. But she said, like, something has to give. Like, something has to give. You're gone all the time. And, you know, I was. And then obviously you're not, you know, I went from getting too much sleep to getting barely any sleep because you're out for astro. And back then as well, when I started, we were in solar maximum. So honestly, even though I was down in the Midlands of Ireland, it felt like every night I was getting aurora. So like, it just didn't matter. I was out. So then I kind of made this joke and said, okay, well, you know, I suppose, out all the time. So I'm just going to start doing workshops. And everyone laughed. And I suppose I kind of laughed. And here we are 7 years on. And, you know, I've got to travel the world, and it's done full circle. And COVID came. And I went from, I suppose, before COVID, traveling 40 weeks of the year, probably 30 weeks of that abroad, running workshops everywhere. And then COVID came, and when COVID came, I just seen everything else in a new light, as we all did, I think. And I realized that this life on the road 24/7 wasn't for me. And that led me, I still do some international stuff, but that just led me to say, okay, well, I need to concentrate on Ireland. I need to concentrate on my first love. And since I really put time and effort into getting people into Ireland and said, okay, Bernard, you need to stop thinking on your own now. You need to start like taking a step and stop being afraid and start collaborating with people. And honestly, the best thing I've ever done. And now next year, for instance, I probably 75% workshops in Ireland with people from the States, from Iceland, Germany, Norway, Switzerland. You know what I mean? So it's just led me to pretty much being full time in Ireland now, which is where I want to be, you know?
That's incredible. And I mean, Ireland's an amazing country. I've been there twice, not for photography, but just for kind of holidays back when I was younger.
Yeah,
And the moment I was there, that I just felt something. It's such a special country. And as you rightly say, it's a bit like Scotland, round every corner almost, there's
yeah.
new opportunities. And it's lovely that you now you're kind of back to that roots and you're going back there and really connecting with your homeland. Because I guess, that's what you know so well, where your passion is, where you began. And it's like you're reconnecting with that, which is amazing. And how you've been able to develop your workshops to get to the stage where you're doing so many and they're selling out. It's incredible. How did you get to that stage? Like, was it quite like easy from the beginning, or did you have a lot of trial and error to get you to where you are now?
Like I had a lot of trial and error, like, no business just takes off. And sometimes people think, oh yeah, like he's just done it and that was it. But how I kind of started, and this was again accidental, was kind of, I was only after joining Facebook. And at the time I set up my company and was selling workshops, I hadn't even set up an Instagram account, which is crazy because Instagram is so, important for businesses and creatives these days. But honestly, it just feels like it just happened. It really does. I did put in the shift, and kind of what I used to do when, the doctor said to me, do you document? Everyone's on YouTube now. I didn't do that. But what I did was, when I got my camera and start getting out and about every single morning, noon and night, I start doing Facebook live videos. And then like all of a sudden I was getting thousands and thousands of views, and this is before the algorithms and stuff. So I think if I'd maybe started a year or two later, when algorithms started to change, it might not have went that way. And it sounds weird enough, like I'm not the only one in the world that has a beard, but I've had this literally since I was 17 years of age, and I've just become known, for my beard, which is weird. Everyone like just got to recognize me, and people in Ireland start saying hello, and I recognize you from Facebook because such and such shared your video, and it kind of spiraled on, and it's nice to know that people know you. And that's great. And I'll never forget my first ever international workshop was October 2016 in Skye, Isle of Skye in Scotland. I went 3 or 4 times and I scouted. But the mad thing is, before I got into photography, I'd seen the fairy pools and stuff like that online and magazines, and I thought, wow, this is just a phenomenal looking place. And it is, obviously, but I never thought anything of it. And it was only when I got into photography, I realized this is only across the road. I honestly thought this fairy pools could have been anywhere in the world. So the first thing I did was went to Skye and went to the fairy pools and went to obviously store. Actually, the first time I went to Scotland or Skye, I didn't even go to the store. I didn't know of it, But I just become totally immersed in Skye, and to date I've been there maybe 25 times. I just loved it. But I scouted it 3 or 4 times and I got to know it and got some shots. And of course, first few workshops, you're winging it, fake it till you make it, yourself. And I'll never forget going to shoot the Aurora at a place called the Hill of Tara in the Midlands in County Meath. And I remember being with my friend Ian, and I had Facebook at the time, no website, no nothing, no Instagram. And I remember just like putting up this Isle of Skye workshop, 3 nights. I think it was like €500 at the time per person, which I was making about 100 quid in total, bringing 4 people. And I just said, I'll throw it up there now, and then I'll leave the phone in the car and we'll go shoot an Aurora and see what happens. So did that, published it on Facebook, put it together, published it on Facebook, went out, shot Aurora for a couple of hours, came back into the car and looked, and like literally my Facebook just exploded. People, that was after selling out, and people were, come on, do another one. I ended up doing like 4 that year. 4, like, again, it was dirt cheap, but like it got me started, and my first ever Irish workshop was just a 1-day Wicklow workshop, which is in the east coast of Ireland here, a beautiful place for waterfalls and mountains. And I think it was like a full day, which to me back then was like not understanding light, and it was like €50 per person, and we were out for like 13 hours and I had 2 people on it.
Wow.
And that's how it started. And some people might say, why have the prices gone up? You know what I mean? Because you do get better, you do get more experience. Then, for instance, now I've just sold 16 spots for Greenland next year without even advertising it.
It's incredible.
And And that's nice. And 16 is a lot of people, but with 2 big boats, you know, so 8 on each boat. So it's not a workshop where 16 people are going to be lined up. But that's kind of where it's gone now, you know. So it's, yeah, very grateful. Had those tough times. COVID was tough to get through, but yeah, it just spiraled and literally just snowballed there. Like I'm very grateful I never had to advertise on Google or advertise on Facebook or advertise on Instagram. Never once did I have to pay for an advertisement or a sponsor post. I never got any sort of like digital marketer. I never got any sort of like crazy technique to help me. I literally up until about a year ago, I only heard of SEO and keywords for my website that I have, like, obviously a few years now. So it's just been pot luck, I suppose. Look at the Irish, some might say, but it's just snowballed, you know.
It's absolutely incredible. I think maybe part of your success has just come from your passion. You know, I can just hear in your voice how passionate you are about it, and you're so dedicated to going out there because you just love it so much. And then people are then seeing your enthusiasm online, and then they're resonating with it, and they're like, I want to experience some of these incredible moments for myself. And I guess, you know, starting with Ireland as well, you know, you obviously had a lot of local people watching your live videos on Facebook, and people that could come to those workshops in the beginning. And then as you branch out, I just love how successful you've been with this, because it's clearly a big passion of yours. You clearly love it, and you're getting to see and experience incredible things with so many like-minded people.
Yeah, it's honestly, and honest to God, like I had so much advice from people. I met up with other tour operators, like, and you know, I got so much advice from amazing people. My dad's a businessman, you know, and I got obviously a lot of advice from him. But like people always said, number one, never name the company after yourself. Of course, I ignored it, and you know, I'm not going to complain. Another thing was never like get too close to clients. Never become, you know, you don't want to become too friendly with them. Honest to God, I have too many friends to list, you know, and that is like, it's really not a complaint. Like, I just don't know where to start. I have, you know, friends all over the country, and every time I bring groups in, like, as I say, Switzerland and the US, like I had a guy over from the US last week, a client, and he couldn't believe everywhere we went, you know, I knew someone or someone knew me, and that's not me saying, oh, everybody knows me. That's just, it's amazing. I love just having conversations with people. I love just like hearing people's stories. I love people knowing my story, you know, and it's very nice to be known. And it's very nice to, you know, for someone to come up and be like, oh, Bernard, how are you? You know, such and so, I'm such and such. And, you know, I followed you from day one, and I've clients from day one that still come away with me now, you know, honest to God, like I've just, you know, so many friends. It's just amazing. It really is. I'm so grateful. And yeah, passion is one thing like I strive for. Is I don't want this falseness, you know, pretending to someone, oh, we have an amazing sunrise right now, just to try get them excited. I want people excited. I want people to see my genuine excitement, and I don't want to just do photography workshops or photography tours. I want to create a whole experience.
Yeah.
You know, right, guys, up for sunrise, blah, blah, blah. We'll go if we get nice light, great. And there's the good thing about Ireland as well. Obviously, we do this abroad, but in Ireland, coffee has just exploded. Cafes have exploded. There's so much competition now. You cannot let the ball drop. So food is just unbelievable everywhere. Coffee is unbelievable everywhere. And of course, that helps us. I don't drink coffee because I need coffee in the morning. You know, I haven't had one yet, and I might not have one today. But we go out for a sunrise with a group, and then you're mad to get a coffee, not because of the caffeine or because you're up early, because you want to reminisce about that amazing light you just got. Yeah. You know, and you're just literally hearing the excitement, and you know, we repeated over the course of a day about how great that day was and that morning was, you know, and that is honestly one of the best feelings you can ever have, is knowing that you got them people that paid their time off work to be away from their family, kids, pets. They did that to be with you, and you've done good, and they keep talking about it. Like, there's no better feeling in the world.
It's amazing. It's clear there from you've been so true to yourself. You know, you mentioned there about the business kind of strategies that people recommend to you. And, you know, I've gone down that route in the past of looking into these things and it's just never felt right. And then I've ended up doing things that I've then ended up changing. And, you know, it's interesting because, you know, you clearly love the adrenaline, the buzz and all that kind of way of doing workshops. And I've tried that and I've enjoyed it, but I'm now completely redefining my workshops. And next year I'm going to be doing much more immersive nature, mindful photography weekends rather than the going around location-based workshops, because that's true to me. But I kind of feel like I've gone into the traditional workshop sense because it's, I guess, what we believe is what a workshop entails. But I've realised it's not quite me, and it's now creating something that is much more me that I can fully give to the clients, which you have fully found yourself in what you do, which is so beautiful. And you can just, the passion in your voice is so inspiring.
Yeah, listen, thanks a million. Like it does mean a lot. Like, and you know what, if you'd have said to me 3-4 years ago, like I'm doing these mindful weekends for photography, I'd be like, oh, here we go, you know. But honest to God, right? Like COVID took a lot out of people, and you know, I always care about people's feelings. I can spot a mile away if someone is not feeling okay, and I like to just literally, sometimes it's physically putting an arm around them. I don't care if you're a 20-year-old, you know, man or woman, or an 80-year-old man or woman. I'm going to put my arm around you physically, and I'll hug you if I have to. And like the thing is, like, you can see now when I've obviously gained more experience on looking at how observing people physically to see, okay, what can I push them to do? You know, but I don't want to push them out of their comfort zone, knowing they're out of their comfort zone. I want to do it in a safe way that they feel safe, they trust me 100%. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm down here. How did I get down here? I wouldn't, like, I'd never, you know. But also then, you know, what you're saying about the more intimate approach and the mindfulness side, I've realized that as well is so important, because I get some clients who, like, listen, when you have a group of 4 or 5, you know, sometimes, like, you know, you could be away one side with one person and there's another one struggling the other side, and, you know, you want to get over there before the light is good. And sometimes people don't get the light. They don't get the shot they want. Sometimes in general, when I'm out on my own, I don't get the shot I want. That's not because I'm not giving them enough attention. It's just sometimes things happen. You know, sometimes you are away with someone else and you think that person is comfortable and they've told you they're comfortable, but then they're struggling with something else and they're getting frustrated. But when I can and have time to react to that frustration, and as well, if I think, okay, the light's gone in a bit now, the cloud's moving this way, in about 10 minutes, that light is going to be coming back out and it's going to be amazing. I need to prepare this person that's stressing out, that's getting a bit caught up in themselves, you know, and getting frustrated with settings or how, you know, the light is reacting to them or whatever. And I just go over and I just say, listen, just turn off the camera for a minute, just 1 minute. And let's just step back 2-3 feet from the tripod and let's have a chat. And I'm like, what's up? And they might say, listen, I'm just finding this frustrating or that frustrating, or I can't get this right and I can't get that right. I said, right. And you're getting mentally frustrated. And that's when, listen, we know mistakes happen in any walk of life. You know, if we're distracted driving, it can lead to catastrophic events. If we're distracted walking, we can fall over. If we're distracted when doing photography, we might not get the shots, you know, and we become mentally distracted and, you know, we just don't get it. So what I like to do is just ask a series of questions. You know, have you family? Yeah. Have you a job? Yes. Have you a house? Yes. Have you a car? Yes. And does the car give you trouble? Do you ever have difficulty with the family? Do you ever have difficulty with the house, a water leak or electrical supply fault or whatever? And they all, yeah, you know, we've all had these problems. And I said, exactly. Now answer me this. Why are you doing photography? And it's like, well, it gets me away, it gets me out, it gets me about. And I said, exactly. You've all these stresses you use photography to get away from. Don't let photography become one of them. You know, and like they're silly kind of questions, but they're all true. None of us some do photography for different reasons, but most of us, we do it to get out and about. You know, just because we may get a shot or we might not get a shot, or just because we might get the conditions or might not get the conditions, we were out. We gave ourselves a fighting chance and we were out, you know, and we got away from the argument you might have had with the brother or sister or the spouse, you know, or the leak that you had in the bathroom and it's stressing you out. Just for 1 hour, you forgot about it. So that's why I always said, don't let photography stress you out. You know, it's that simple.
Yeah. It's so true. You sound so incredibly self-aware and so very much aware of other people's experiences and emotions and everything. I guess, how have you developed that, do you feel, throughout your life? Because it just seems like some people are natural at it, but yeah, I just wonder, how have you developed that ability to be so, self-aware and able to do this with people?
I think number one, it's dealing with so many people. Okay, like I am honestly the biggest messer. I am the biggest messer, and I want to be the center of attention all the time. And anyone that knows me will say that. But there's a time and a place, and I think this is where common sense comes into it. And as they say, common sense is not so common. But you just learn about how to deal with different people. And the first thing I do is right, like, we are a group of 5 or 6 people in a van or in a cabin or in a hotel, and we are going to spend the majority of our time together over the next week. And I don't want to just have these people saying hello. Like, for instance, now, I bought, like, literally, I went in through the deep end. Honestly, when I started this, I hadn't a penny. And my dad helped me out a little bit at the start. And I went and I was looking at vans, 9-seater vans from the very start. And I had a budget of like $7,000. And I ended up spending like $18,000 on my first van. My dad helped me a little, but obviously I had to pay him back. And here I am, 6 years later, 3 years after that, I traded in that van and I bought a new van in January 2020. Obviously COVID came then. But now I have a van to call my own. I don't owe a thing on it. And the reason I got the van, I didn't want, and there is some workshops around, and it's not dissing them, by the way, but there's a lot of workshops where it's all follow me, convoy stuff. Right? Number one, having a van, better for the environment. Is it the reason I bought the van? No. Right? Do I care about the environment? Yes, but it wasn't my thought process. Okay. So, but having the van, it meant that me and my group are together. We're going for sunrises together. We're going for tea and coffee together. We're going for sunsets together. We're going for Astro together. Everything is together. If you do these things in convoy, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's harder when people are strangers. If I have a car and everyone's following me, it's very rare you would have where, like, you have 5 clients. They're going to be strangers to each other. It's very rare one is going to say to the other, oh, sure, you come with me and park your car. They're all going to be nervous. They're all going to be, quiet. And it's a case that the 5 clients will follow you. And there you are. All of a sudden, you're in 6 cars traveling to locations. If you're doing that for a day or 2 or 3, like, people don't get to know each other, and you don't get to know them. You get to know nothing about them. I don't want someone to come and go and that's it. What did you learn? Shutter speed. What did you learn? Long exposures. I want to learn. I want to know that they learn something, but I want to know something about them and I want them to know something about me. And that way we can have a mutual understanding. Then I know how to approach them as clients. They might have a discussion in the van with another client. And I'm like, right, okay, this person's a bit more sensitive than this person. If this one's struggling, I can give them a physical hug. Hugs make people feel better. It makes me feel better. It doesn't make everyone feel better. But if there's someone that I think, okay, they won't want to hug, I'll approach them in a different way. So it's just trying to understand and observe people's, like not just them, their personalities, because we're all different. And I think that over time, I've always been Jack the lad, but I've always been a sensitive soul as well. And I think that probably helps because you can get best of both worlds. You don't let anyone mess you about, but you also want to be conscious of everybody else's feelings and give them, as I say, not just a photography tour, a whole experience, that they talk about for the rest of their lives.
That's so lovely. So lovely. I love how you speak there about what the van has given you in terms of keeping everybody together. It's funny because the workshops I've done the last few years has been more of the convoy style, purely because I've not been able to afford a van. Yeah. But one of the great things is that often I will have a client in my car, and sometimes because we all have dinner together when we arrive, people get to know each other, and then people are happy to share cars. So like not everybody's in their own individual car. Yeah. But one thing I'm realising now is I don't want that. I want to find locations where we're all together, where people can stay on site. They've all got their own little pods or something, so that they've got their own space. But we have this like indoor space for learning. You walk out the door and you've got so much of nature around you. So it's again creating that community and that inclusion, but in a different way and a different style of workshop, and much more suited to me as well, which is lovely. But yeah, I love how for you it's all about that experience, about the shared experience and about really getting to know each other. And I think it'd be good now to go back to your experience with photography as well. And one thing that you seem to love a lot is the Northern Lights, and you've got some incredible images of them when you're marketing some of your workshops on your website. So I just wondered, how do you feel when you're out there underneath incredible lights like that? Because we're coming up to another big solar cycle now, so the next year or two is going to be amazing, hopefully.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably something that makes me emotional. You know, and do you know what? I do have a passion for Northern Lights. You know, I have honestly, one of my best friends is a guy called Adrian Mauduit, and he lives up in northern Norway, and I got to know him 5 or 6 years ago. And you know, one of my great passions is being able to call someone a friend, and then be able to get them involved in what I do. And Adrian Mauduit is the most knowledgeable person I've ever come across, and like for passion for the Northern Lights, but also knowledge. Right, I have honestly learned, and this is what I like to do as well. I want people to learn without realizing they're being taught. You know, and that's what I've got from Adrian. Like, Adrian's telling me this stuff, and I'm like off to La La Land. You know, in my head, he's explaining all these scientific ways and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah. But then a week later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what he meant. You know what I mean? So it's not even that I have I do have a passion for it, but it's not crazy passionate. But it's just a feeling when it's happening. It's seeing and hearing people's reactions. It's one of the best things as a photographer, as a workshop leader, that you can get, especially with a small, intimate group. You hear every, honestly, moan and groan and word that comes out of their mouth. You know, if you have a group of 20 people, like, again, nothing, this is just how I like to work. It's nothing got to do with me saying anybody else is bad that does this. This is just how I work. But it's just hearing people's reactions. Honestly, like, it's just amazing. I suppose my love for the Northern Lights over the past few years is literally from just being under the Northern Lights. And like, you know, when I'm in Northern Norway, you know, it's that waiting game. And if you're waiting for hours and hours and hours, next thing, bingo, it happens. It's such a relief. And obviously then that gives you a buzz. You know, you've been so frustrated, and you could wait for 3 hours just for a clearing, or worse again, when the skies are completely clear and there's just no activity, is way more frustrating than a cloudy sky and aurora happening. It really is, because you're so close yet so far away. But then when that persistence, like, so a guy, my local camera shop that I buy all my gear from, a guy, Dave Whelan Cameras in Ireland here, he years ago told me a great thing: persistence beats resistance. And it's not just in photography, it's in everything. And that's what the aurora is. It's persistence, you know. And funny, the resistance of the aurora is what causes a boomerang and to go crazy. So kind of ties in nicely. But yeah, it's people's reactions, you know, their facial expressions as well. That's one thing, because, you know, you get a lot of people and they might say, do you not get sick of seeing it? And I'm like, what? Oh, the Northern Lights. And I'm like, I spend half my time looking at their faces. Don't mind the Northern Lights, you know? And this year was particularly special. I do 5 weeks in Norway every year, 2 in Lofoten, 2 in Senja, and a bit of time off in between the two of them. This year was particularly different because I was severely sick when I was in Norway. I had very bad gastroenteritis and a load of other things, and I lost about 1.5 stone. The good thing is most of the clients were repeats. They know what they're going to get from me. They're going to get maximum effort regardless. And, you know, that's exactly what they got. There were 4 very successful trips, and everyone that did Lofoten with me this year, bar one person, is coming to Senja with me next year. So, and then the Senja trips were just off the charts successful. And the very last trip, I got to bring my dad along as well. And yeah, it's just honestly just to share that experience with my dad. And you know, there was one night we had to drive from Senja Island, where we were staying in the middle of the island, to the weather was so bad. I drove 4 hours into like inland Finland to get clear skies, because the weather tends to be a bit more settled in there. So it was 4 hours each way, but I totally worth it. As soon as we got clear skies, bang, we had hours and hours and hours of Aurora. And generally, like, you're driving back at 4 or 5 in the morning, and obviously you would be tired, but you're so buzzed up and you're not tired. You're actually singing in the van on the way back, and clients are singing and they're hooraying and hip hipping. And to share that experience with my dad was one of the best things I'll ever experience. Really, really was. So, again, it's just about their reactions, and that's number one. The Aurora is great, but seeing their reactions and hearing the stories after, that's just unbelievable.
I love how you've managed to create a life for yourself where you're doing exactly what you love, and you're also being of incredible service to others, giving them this experience, really facilitating that. It's such a beautiful thing to do. I mean, I can't remember exactly what it said on your website, what you did before photography, but it must be a completely different world now for you.
It is. It was, if I stayed doing what I was doing, I'd be a rich man now. But I was a plumber, and I did that for 10 years. I was in retail management for a while as well, which I enjoy. Again, it was with people. So, I didn't really mind that. But yeah, the time came just to give it all up and just pursue what was now a dream. It was never a dream. Never did I think I'd own a camera, never mind do this. And it's just like gone full circle, because now obviously I'm spending more time at home. And this year I've had a lot of health issues, like a lot, from colonoscopies to, tennis elbow, to severe back problems, to even having in a couple of weeks' time to see a breast surgeon, which as a male, some people might laugh. I laughed at first. But, I don't think it's anything serious. But I think I give myself too much time off. We bought a lovely house here in the west of Ireland. And, I said, right, I came back from Norway, got the keys of the house. And that's, I was like, right, summer, I'm giving myself loads of time off. And I did. I gave myself like 3 months off and worked in the house and done so much. And I think my body just kind of maybe seized up a little bit, and all these problems came. So getting them sorted and feel pretty good, like. But yeah, it's just turned full circle now to, my life was abroad essentially. Like, it was crazy what I was doing, and I still think I was doing it to my full ability, because no clients ever said any different. But I remember one time before COVID getting into Dublin airport at like 12 midnight and having to be back at the airport at 4 a.m. to fly out at 6 a.m. to Italy for a Dolomites workshop. And I thought it was great at the time, but COVID made me realize these things and a lot of other things. Like, for instance, last week I had a guy over from the States, Chris Byrne, an amazing photographer from Oregon. And he came over, and we'd spoke for honestly 4 or 5 years. And I asked him if he ever wanted to come to Ireland and do workshops. Like, I was like, I'm your man. So post-COVID, he finally, we talked all the time anyway, but he said, listen, time to pull the trigger. And honestly, like, I gave him some images to promote and stuff for next year, 2024. And like, we have 2 11-day workshops in September next year, sold out. And wow. 2025 is almost sold out. And like, it just, I've like worked with I work with a lot of companies, but I suppose this is the newest one. But one of my oldest clients is a company in Switzerland, Amazing Views photo tours. And they've been working in Ireland with me for 4 or 5 years now, like definitely just before COVID. I remember Jennifer, the owner of the company, when I got in touch first and asked if she was interested, she was like, you don't really see much from Ireland, so I'm not sure. And I was like, listen, if you come over and you don't like it, that's fine. Just come over and see. The moment she stepped off the plane, she spent a week here. She's like, I need to come back. And since then, we've run 4 workshops a year in Ireland, 4 completely different ones as well, which is great. And that's literally every year since. And like, pretty much all of them sell out. And we've even had dozens of people do all 4. And I suppose it's nice to know that, because they're coming back for Ireland, but I'd like to think they're maybe coming back for me as well. But you have, again, the other 2 sides of it is, you have the Swiss who don't have a coastline. So they come over and they see our lighthouses and sea stacks and sea arches, and they're just totally blown away. But then you have the Americans come over, and I'm like, oh, look at this sea stack, look at this sea arch. And like, Bernard, we have them in America. Like, we do not have history. Show us your castles, and literally having Chris over last week, bringing him to some castles. And honestly, the conditions we didn't like, there was nothing we didn't get. We have the Rock of Castle, which is probably the most famous castle in Ireland, on a rock and a castle and fog around it. And, it was above the fog, which never happens. Like,
I've
never
been there,
happens.
so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's incredible, that place. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and listen, people watching, they might be able to see and they might not be able to see, but literally just kind of newly edited. But I will just see if I can show, like, there it is there.
Wow. So, oh my goodness. What a moment.
Sorry. So yeah, it was, so then we had like a little abbey as well, which is only like literally 20 minutes from me. And I knew it was there, obviously, but never went to it. And I've only been living here for like 5 or 6 months. So Chris said, oh, such and such an abbey. And I was like, oh yeah, I live beside that. Like, so we went there and, we went there and that's what we got.
Wow.
So
beautiful rainbow.
Like, we got loads. And the good thing is, like, if Chris wasn't over, I wouldn't have been in the position. He's thanking me. And I'm like, no, I need to be thanking you, because I see Ireland in a different way again now, because I wouldn't have been at these castles, because the Ireland, like Scotland, they're just castles. We have them everywhere. So now I'm seeing both sides of the scale, where Switzerland want coast because they have castles, they don't have coast. Americans have plenty of coast, but they don't have castles. So that's kind of cool. And that's allowed me to build a model on being able to use Ireland to promote all over the place then, because, some people don't have as much history as we do. And then some people don't have coastline. So it's the best of both worlds,
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing I love, about what we do is that we recognise that we learn as much from our clients as we do about ourselves. And I've learned so much more about photography since I started working with other people than I did when I was just, before I started, having clients and everything. It's an amazing two-way relationship. And I think those that have that understanding, you can create some beautiful connections with the people that come to take part in your services and enjoy the world with you. And one thing I'd love to end on is, it says on your website that photography is the gift that keeps on giving. So I wondered if you could explain exactly what you mean by that, because it's so true, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective.
Like, even if I kind of like move away from photography, is like, just being out with a camera. For instance, this morning, I told you before, unfortunately, I found out yesterday that my dog has cancer and he's only got a few weeks to live, and honestly devastated about it. But I just couldn't sleep, and I woke up at 4 a.m. and I just went, like, I got up here for a while, edited a couple of photos, and then about half an hour before sunrise, it looked like to be a lovely morning, and I went out, and then like literally 30 minutes after sunrise, still couldn't see the sun. Next of all, it just appeared. And I was like, wow. So of course I checked the Saharan dust maps and the Canadian wildfire maps, and it was just such a muted sunrise because of the Canadian wildfire smoke, right, which is drifting across the Atlantic to us. And from a non-photography, perspective, but still obviously looking at the landscape, the fascination with the fact that smoke is drifting across the Atlantic, obviously from terrible wildfires, to Ireland, and to being like not being able to see the sun like in the clear sky until half an hour after sunrise, and then it kind of disappeared again, and then it came back again, and an hour later I was able to get my camera and long lens out and look at the sunspots on the sun without a solar filter. So moving into the photography side of it, like, that is a gift. Like, just to, again, we're just learning every day, and it was just crazy to be able to see the sunspots on the sun, which is obviously part of how we get the aurora and stuff like that. So yourself, when the sun comes up 10, 15 minutes later, it's just too bright. So this was just a red ball. And it was just phenomenal to be able to see it like that, And another little thing as to why it's the gift that keeps on giving is, for instance, the Lofoten Islands. Everybody knows, or generally everybody knows, that view in the Lofoten Islands of the red cabin in the mountain. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know it yourself.
Yeah,
I'll never forget being there a couple of years ago, and it was had it on my story, because that's where people want to go. And a photographer replied to my story, and he said, "Oh, I hate that view." And I said, "I love that view. It's that simple." And he replied, and he says, just everyone shoots it. Like, it's just like, oh, it's such a lame location now. Everyone's there and it's always full. And I said, do you mind if I ask you what you do? And he said, I'm a teacher. I said, so you're going into the same classroom every day and you're telling me this place is crap. And he says, I'm going into the same classroom, but I've different students every day. And I says, funny you say that. If that's the case and we want to use that analogy, this view is my classroom and the weather is my student. It changes every day. And obviously I got no reply back. And it wasn't in a nasty way either. It was like just proving a point. You know, like if we look at everything as the same, nothing is ever the same. And, you know, like 5, 6, 7 years on from my first time going to the Lofoten Islands, that place still gives me goosebumps because the light is ever changing, the mood is ever changing. And that's not just with there, it's with everywhere. You know, these people that don't want to return to locations that they've been to already, it's so narrow-minded, in my opinion. You know, like just enjoy it all. Doesn't matter where you are. And that to me is just the gift that keeps on giving. I can be anywhere in the world that I want, you know, and it's that simple.
Wow, it's so beautiful. Like everybody's perspective on photography and what they like to photograph is so different, but I love that you see the beauty in the same place over and over again because you're recognizing that every time you go it's so different and it's unique. And it's about going to the places that you're feeling a connection with, because then you can bring that to your clients. There's no point in you going places that you don't feel a connection with, because you're not going to be authentic, but you've managed to find the places that really speak to you, bring people to them and give them these incredible experiences. And I think your story in many respects is very inspirational, because it shows what a man with a passion and a bit of drive can do and how he can positively impact so many people's lives, which is so beautiful. So for those listening who have resonated with your story today and would like to connect with you or maybe come on one of your workshops, where can they go to find you?
I'm hoping now a lot of people would be able to find me easily, because I'll be arrogant about this, but I literally posted a video on Instagram last week of myself in a place called Dulac Valley in County Mayo, where I live here in the west of Ireland. And it's just a funnel. This valley is a funnel. So there's a lake and there's the valley. And there was this like crazy gusts of wind, like crazy. So I put my jacket up like I did and I got one of the lads to video me. And I was fully leaning 45 degrees as the wind blew me. And wow. I put it up on Instagram and it's like literally just about to hit 5 million views. And like, it's just,
oh my gosh,
honestly, like it means nothing. It's not bringing in, it's not paying me, but it's still a cool thing to have, you know? And it's brought, like, again, it's not really that good, but it's brought 7,000 new followers on. So I've went up to 25,000. So, but in general, Instagram's probably the best way, which is just literally that simple, BG Landscape Tours. And then website then bglandscapetours.ie, and then Bernard Geraghty Landscape Tours on Facebook, and yeah, whatever else you might find me on YouTube, or you know.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Bernard. It's been so lovely to speak with you, and I wish you all the best with the future of your workshop business.
Kim, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this week's podcast. It really does mean the world to me. As mentioned in this podcast, I'm looking to change how I run my personal photography workshops moving forwards, with some interesting photographic connections in-person workshops due to happen in 2024. If you'd like to be the first people to hear about this, please feel free to sign up to our mailing list at photographicconnections.com. And a huge thank you to the wonderful community members that are helping me trial the workshops so I can ensure they are the best they can be for those who want to come. And now that this podcast has come to an end, there's only one thing left for you to do. It's time to pick up your camera and head outdoors. There's so many incredible photographic opportunities just waiting for you to discover.